talk about not being religious. Webster's dictionary says it's man's best effort to reach God. And some people live in chains in their life because in their heart they're not free. And the thing that frees you in your life is when you know that God is for you. When he knows he has a plan and a purpose. As he tries to break these chains here today. I believe God wants to even break chains in people's hearts here this afternoon. Are you ready? Let's see if he can do it.
Furious with rage, King Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and he said to them, "Is it true that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now when you hear the sound of the horn, if you are ready, fall down and worship the image I have made. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" The king Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with rage, he ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual, and commanded some of the strongest soldiers of his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes and all their clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leapt to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men that were tied up and thrown into the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, O king." He said, "Look! I see 4 men walking around, and the 4th man looks like the Son of God. So take my life!"
But John Griffin was a guy who was a bridge operator who worked every day. What his job was in the 1930s is he would go to work, and his job, he was a bridge operator, and he would operate this bridge and be in a control tower that would raise and lower this bridge over the Mississippi River. It's a true story. I checked it out. And what he would do when it would come time for these big boats to go through the canal, he would pull the lever back and he'd raise the bridge. And these huge ships would go through the canal. And then when it would come time for these big locomotives to go over the bridge, he would lower the bridge. And these locomotives that were right next to the control tower, they'd go over the bridge at a high rate of speed. And John Griffin, people think, well, that's not a big deal. How many people know back in 1932, when our country was in 25% unemployment because of the Depression, it was a big deal to have a job back then, back in 1932. And him and his wife got married in 1920. In 1920, they got married, and it was their dream to have children. They wanted to have children. And his wife, they tried to have children, but after 4 years of being married, his wife became pregnant. 9 months later, gave birth to a son. And it talked about how John Griffin loved his boy more than anything else in the world. He loved his son so much. And when his son was old enough, now this brings you up to 1932, his son is 8 years old. And so he had this all planned out because every day when John Griffin would go to work, he would always be by himself. So he said, one day I'm going to take my son with me. And that day came in 1932 when his son was 8 years old. And so there John Griffin was, raising and lowering the bridge over the Mississippi River, and his boy sitting there in the back of the control tower watching his dad work, and his son was amazed at these big boats that would go through the canal and these trains that would go over the bridge, and they were having a great time. Now listen to this. It came time for lunch, and at lunchtime they had this all planned out. At lunchtime they had this all planned out that his wife had put together a picnic basket. And what they were going to do is they were going to go down to the bank of the Mississippi River, and they were going to eat lunch together. And so his wife put the picnic basket together, and John took the picnic basket. At 12 o'clock, there was all these boats going through the canal. So John left the bridge in the up position. And so there they went down a white spiral ladder that would take them down to the bank of the Mississippi River, John and his son. And they took that picnic basket, and they went over and they sat, down on the bank of the Mississippi River. And there they sat there, father and son. They sat there eating their lunch, their sandwiches together. And all these boats were going through the canal. And John's boy, only being like 8 years old, had a million questions. 8-year-old kids, they got a million questions. Dad, where's that boat going to? And John would talk about these ships and all these different places. And he knew everything about these boats. He knew all the cargo that would be taken, different ports throughout the world. And so they were having a great time. And he was explaining to his son, and they were talking back and forth about all these boats that were going through the canal. All these different ships and the different ports that would take in different kinds of cargo throughout the world. When all of a sudden, time had gotten away from John Griffin. When John Griffin had looked at his watch, he pulled his watch out of his pocket. He saw that it was 5 minutes to 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock every day, there was a train called the Memphis Express. The Memphis Express was a passenger train. The Memphis Express had 400 passengers on it. It was a passenger train. It was a big locomotive. And every day at 1 o'clock, it would go over the bridge. When he looked at his watch and saw that it was 5 minutes to the hour, his heart about dropped to his stomach. Because he realized that he had 5 minutes to get up into the control tower, to go and lower the bridge, or 400 people are going to die in a train crash. So he didn't have time to say, explain to his son, the severity and the urgency about getting up in the control tower and lowering that bridge. But all he said to his son is, son, don't move. Stay right here. Just don't move. And as fast as he could, he sprinted up the bank of the Mississippi River. He got up to the point to where that white spiral ladder that would take him up into the control tower, and he started climbing up this ladder. He said about halfway up the ladder that he could hear the whistle of the Memphis Express blowing in the background. And he said in the nick of time, he got up into that control tower. He got himself in position. He went to grab the lever that would lower that bridge. But John said that there was always a protocol. Every time he would raise and lower the bridge, that he would always check to the right and to the left to make sure that there was no obstruction in the gears. And so when John checked to the left and saw that everything was okay, and then he checked to the right, he couldn't believe what he saw. You see, his son didn't stay down on the bank of the Mississippi River. His son had tried to follow his dad up the ladder, 8-year-old boy. And somehow when he was climbing up the ladder, he had slipped off the ladder and fell down in between where the gears were at. And so when he had his hand on the lever and he looked at his son down there, and his son was saying, Dad, help me. Immediately, he took his hand off the lever. The first thing that came to his mind is, I got to rescue my son. I've got to rescue him. And he went to go to the back of the control box. But all of a sudden, he thought really quick in the back of his mind, he thought about the 400 people who were on the train. And that train was so close, and the bridge was still in the up position. And he was in such anguish, he didn't know what to do. And he said just in a moment's time, he made a very difficult decision that day. He started took his left arm and he clenched it over his face like this. He took his right arm and he grabbed that lever and he pulled the lever back that day. All of a sudden, this bridge went in the downward position and clicked on the other side. The moment it clicked on the other side, this big locomotive, this huge train, this with 400 passengers on it, all of a sudden, it shot over the bridge at a high rate of speed. You see, that day, John Griffin stood there and wept in a control tower because that day, his son was killed that day to save 400 people that were on a train. And you know the amazing thing about it is all those people went by on the train and they never had a clue. They never understood about the great price that was paid for their life. That there was a price that was paid for their life. That it was John Griffin's son that day. And all these people were going by at a high rate of speed. The only person that knew that was going on was the guy that was the conductor. He said that the bridge, when it clicked on the other side, it was only 50 yards away from where the train was getting ready to go over. And the conductor looked at John Griffin going by at a high rate of speed with kind of a panic look on his face, looking at him like this. And he said John Griffin stood there in shock. And he was watching all these people in the train go by. Shh. Shh. The train was going by. And all these people were just going about their business, not understanding about the great price that was paid. He said he saw a man in a passenger car by himself, and he was reading a newspaper. There was another lady. She had a big hat on. She was sipping her tea. He saw all these individual people going by. And that day, John Griffin turned and he looked at the train as it was going by. And he screamed at the train. And this is what he screamed that day. He screamed, "Don't you realize? Don't you realize what I just did? I just killed my son so you could live." Shh. Shh. All those people going by in the train had not a clue about the great price that was paid for their life. And the story was John Griffin that day sacrificed his son to save 400 people on a train. True story. Second